If you bought a new car in Britain in the last couple of years and you have looked up what it is worth lately, you already know what this is about. 12 cars that lost so much value in the UK between 2025 and 2026 that the numbers stop reading like depreciation and start reading like a clerical error. Real list prices, real forecourt prices, what each one cost the person who bought it new, and what it now costs the person clever enough to buy it second. That is the whole deal. And I am going to earn it with numbers rather than adjectives. Here is the part nobody says out loud. Not one of these cars broke. There is no recall in this story, no engine that eats itself, no gearbox that grenades at 40,000 miles. Most of them are perfectly decent machines that do exactly what the brochure promised. They collapsed in value anyway because of decisions made in offices by people who were never going to be sitting in front of a trade-in valuation with a slightly sick feeling in their stomach. Somebody signed those decisions off. It was not you, and you paid for them. I have spent a long time around cars going through valuation, watching what the trade actually pays as opposed to what the screen advert says. And the thing that still gets me is how fast a number can move once the market decides it was wrong in the first place. Not gradually, overnight. 3 flags before we start, so you know what you are waiting for. At number 9, there is a car that was 3 months old, effectively brand new, and sold for £37,000 under its list price. At number 11 sits the single worst retained value of any new car on sale in this country. It keeps roughly a quarter of what you paid after 3 years. And at number 12 is the one that fell hardest of all and then stopped falling, which tells you more about why this happened than the other 11 put together. Let me give you the thread that runs through all of them first, because without it, this is just a sad list. There are 2 prices attached to every new car. There is the number the manufacturer prints, and there is the number the market will actually pay for that car once it is used. Those 2 numbers are set by completely different people with completely opposite interests, and the gap between them is where your money goes. When a car is launched at a price the used market later refuses to honour, the correction does not land on the manufacturer. It lands on whoever happens to be holding the keys. The technical term for the survivor of that gap is residual value, the percentage of the original price the car still commands later on. Forget the phrase. What is physically happening is simpler and colder. A room full of people at the valuation firms decides every month what your car is worth to a stranger. Cap HPI is one of the houses that does it, and their number becomes the number your dealer quotes you, whether you agree with it or not. One honest warning before the count. These figures come from several different sources, and they do not all measure the same thing the same way. Some are 3-year retained value forecasts. Some are real advertised prices in 2026. Some are what the trade paid. I am telling you that up front because mixing them is a bit rough. And I would rather say so than pretend I have one clean data set. The pricing and retained value figures in this kind of analysis are approximate and vary by specification, mileage, and condition. Treat everyone as the centre of a range, not a quote. Number 1. The Vauxhall Corsa Electric. This is the one that hurts, because the petrol Corsa is one of the sanest purchases in Britain, and this is the same car with a battery in it. It retains something like 28% after 3 years, around 8,300 tonne left from a 29,045 tonne list price. What car had it as the new car, losing the biggest percentage of its value over 3 years and 36,000 miles, which is a hell of a thing to say about a Corsa? Here is the mechanism, and it is the same mechanism 9 more times in this list, so learn it now. Vauxhall made dramatic price cuts to the Corsa Electric, which made it more affordable new and simultaneously tanked its used values. New models starting from under $27,000, while barely used examples under a year old were showing up, with $15,000 off that list price. Read that again. A car less than 12 months old, $15,000 adrift. That is not depreciation in any sense your dad would recognize. That is a repricing. The car itself is fine. Roughly 222 miles of range in some versions, 134 brake horsepower, quick enough. The honest criticism is that it rides firm and the back seats are tight, not that it fails. Which brings us straight to its twin, because the same components got a second badge and the same fate. Number 2, the Peugeot E208. Entry-level Allure versions cost from $3,150, rising to $4,900 in top specification with the bigger battery, and a year later, used prices sit well under $20,000, with 3-year-old cars closer to $10,000. That is the whole item. It is a nicer thing to sit in than the Vauxhall, and it lands in exactly the same hole, because they were both priced for a market that did not turn up. The two of them together make the point better than either does alone. This is not about a bad car. It is about a bad number written on a launch press release. Number 3 is the one where the badge was supposed to protect it. Number 3, the Fiat 500e. By the way, if you want to keep your car running for as long as possible without wasting money on unnecessary garage bills, I put together a guide called the 500k Mile Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your car last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot unnecessary repairs and garage upsells before they cost you a fortune. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera, or use the first pinned comment below. And the 500e should have worked, because a small, quiet, cheerful electric city car is the single most obvious application of a battery there is. Entry-level new cars at $25,000 to $35,500 with the smallest battery, about $3,000 more for the bigger one, and delivery mileage examples turning up on the used market at $19,000 or less, with aggressive discounting by Fiat doing the residuals no favours at all. Go up to the fancier end and the picture is starker. A 42 kilowatt-hour Giorgio Armani edition at roughly $34,000 new is worth somewhere around $1,400 at 3 years, or at about 31% retained. Notice what happened to the special edition specifically. You paid a premium for the designer trim and the badge, and the used market charged you the entire premium as a fee for the privilege. Edition premiums get stripped immediately on resale, that is a general rule, and it is worth carrying around with you for the rest of your car buying life. A special edition is a thing you buy for yourself, never a thing you buy for the resale. Small and cheap did not save these 3. Next up is the one that had a decade-long head start and still went over the cliff. Number 4, the Nissan Leaf. There is a real sadness in this one for me, because the Leaf is the car that proved this could be done at all, built in Sunderland, driven by hundreds of thousands of ordinary people who had no interest in being early adopters of anything. The 39 kilowatt-hour Ascenta went out at around $29,000, and a 3-year-old example now trades at roughly $7,800, about 27% retained. Why? Not because it stopped working. Leafs are, if anything, embarrassingly durable. It is that the world moved and the car could not follow. The aging platform, the CHAdeMO fast-charging socket that fewer and fewer places support, and the shorter range against modern rivals drag the values down sharply. The charging plug is the killer. It is a physical connector on the side of the car that the rest of the industry has walked away from, and no software update fixes a shape. And then Nissan launched an all-new Leaf, shaped like an SUV with modern tech, which pushed the old car further into the shade. That is the manufacturer doing the honest thing by new buyers and doing something else entirely to the people who already own one. Here is where I will mark my own reasoning, rather than pretend it is a finding. If your driving is genuinely the school run, the shops and back home again, an £8,000 Leaf with a healthy battery is, in my view, one of the best value pieces of transport currently for sale in this country. That is my read, not a data point. Number 5 is the one where the finance paperwork did the damage rather than the engineering. Number 5, the Renault Zoe. Around 30% retained, roughly $6,600 left from £22,000. But the Zoe carries a wrinkle the others do not. And it is the sort of thing that only ever bites the second-hand buyer. Renault sold a lot of Zoes where you bought the car and rented the battery month after month separately. Cars on a leased battery are typically worth $3,000 to $6,000 less than the equivalent with an owned battery. And selling one is harder because your buyer pool shrinks to people willing to take on the ongoing rental. So if you are shopping, that is the single question to ask before you ask anything else. Is the battery owned or hired? Get it in writing. Stop the count for a second, because 5 items in you have enough examples to see the shape. Every one of those 5 is a small, sensible, affordable car that was launched at a price belonging to a considerably more expensive class of vehicle. And every one of them was then discounted new, hard, by the people who set that price in the first place. The cars did not fail. The pricing failed, and the failure was passed downhill, which means the pattern has nothing to do with batteries and everything to do with arithmetic. From here, the numbers get much larger because we leave the cheap end. And I have still got 2 flags outstanding. The 3-month-old car that shed 37 grand and the worst retained value on sale in Britain. Number 6, the Vauxhall Astra plug-in hybrid. Around $43,000 new for the Ultimate, roughly $12,500 at 3 years, about 29% retained. A decent car saddled with a punchy price tag, and used values suggesting buyers were reluctant to pay the list price. Auto Express put the 3-year loss at more than 70% and pointed out what a bargain that makes it second-hand. A well-built 3-year-old family hatch for about 12 grand with 178 brake horsepower, under 8 seconds to 62 miles an hour, roughly 43 miles of electric range, and 40 to 50 miles per gallon once the battery is done. That is a genuinely good car. The problem was never the car. Asking north of £40,000 is a lot of money to attach to a badge most buyers associate with sensible pricing, and the used market is where that gets settled, not the showroom. Number 7. The DS3 E-Tense. Roughly $39,000 new, about $11,300 at 3 years, around 29% retained. A compact electric crossover with real style, whose weakest point was always its high new pricing. French premium brands have historically struggled to hold value in the UK, and the DS3 and DS9 both sit inside Britain's top 10 fastest depreciators. New buyers pay a premium for the badge, used buyers do not give it a second thought, which is about as neat a summary of how residual values work as you will ever get. Right, 5 items to go, and if this has been useful so far, subscribing is the whole ask. It costs you nothing, and it means the next one finds you, because from here it gets properly expensive. The next 2 cars between them managed to lose more money than the first 7 combined, and one of them did it in a quarter of a year. Number 8, the DS9 E-Tense. A flagship saloon in a segment Britain barely acknowledges, roughly $65,000 new, around $18,700 at 3 years, about 29% retained. Auto Express noted that given French luxury car has been the secret password to epic depreciation since at least the 1990s, it is almost impressive the DS9 only lands mid-table. £46,000 gone in 36 months on a car with nothing wrong with it. If you want a big, quiet, deeply comfortable saloon, and you do not care in the slightest what your neighbours make of the badge, this is possibly the most car per pound available in Britain right now. If you bought one new, I am sorry, and you already knew. Number 9, and here is the flag I planted at the start. The BMW i5. List price 60 Century 695 for the less popular Sport, 74,205 for the M Sport that people actually order. And used 3-month-old examples selling for a whopping 37,000 tonnes off the list price, with brand new cars having $18,000 taken off before they even leave the forecourt. Sit with that for a moment, because it is the most instructive number in this entire video. £37,000 on a car with delivery mileage on it. That is not a car losing value with age or use. There is no wear involved. Nothing has happened to it at all. The car is identical to the one that left the factory. The only thing that changed is the price the market is willing to say out loud. Motorpoint's data has the i5 and the i7 both capable of losing 50% of their value in year one. Very high new list prices that the used market discounts aggressively. That is the mechanism. And it is worth understanding why an executive saloon is so exposed. A car like this is bought overwhelmingly on business finance and salary sacrifice, in fleets on short cycles. So they all arrive back on the used market at roughly the same time, in roughly the same specification, hunting the small number of private buyers who want a £70,000 electric saloon. Supply lands in a lump. Demand does not. The consequence nobody mentions. The second owner of an i5 gets a superb car with warranty left for the price of a mid-range family SUV. The first owner underwrote it. That is not a market failure. That is the market working exactly as designed on someone. Number 10. The Jaguar I-Pace, which is the one I find most interesting of all 12. Around $9,500 used against roughly $70,000 new, about 72% off, on a car with a 90 kilowatt-hour battery, 292 miles of official range and all-wheel drive. Live market data backs it up. An average of just over $19,000, down about 4% over the last year, with cars advertised from $10,595 upwards, and this one genuinely was ahead of its time. Jaguar built a properly good electric car early, before most of the German establishment had committed to anything. It is quick. It has real steering precision and balance. It still looks striking with that cab-forward stance. And it is comfortably the prettiest thing in its class. What killed the residuals was a stack of things arriving at once. A high list price the used market could not sustain, an aging EV platform, and uncertainty about where the brand itself is heading. I will be straight with you about the limits here. I do not have a satisfying explanation for why the same I-Pace, same year, similar mileage can be advertised £3,000 or £4,000 apart in the same week. Battery health explains some of it. Service history explains some. But not all of it, and I have never seen anyone account for the rest properly. Anybody who tells you they have got that modelled precisely is guessing with more confidence than I am. Second stop in the count. And this one is a correction to something you might be concluding. You have now seen 10 cars, and 9 of them plug in. You could reasonably decide this is a story about electricity. It is not quite. The Mazda CX-5, an ordinary well-made petrol SUV, goes from about $33,000 new to roughly $16,000 plus at 3 years. And the Nissan Qashqai, which has topped Britain's SUV charts on and off for years, drops from about $30,000 to $15,000 in the same period, precisely because Britain cannot get enough of them. Popularity itself is a depreciation factor. When there are hundreds of the same car advertised, only the very best ones get a proper price. So the fuel is not the cause, it is an accelerant. And with that in mind, the last 2 are the ones that prove it, starting with the worst number in Britain. Number 11. The GWM Aura Zo 3. It retains 25.8% of its value after 3 years, the worst of any new car on sale in the UK, turning a 31,995 purchase into an 8,250 used car. A loss of 23,545 across a 3-year keep, driven almost entirely by a brand with almost no UK equity, and an outstanding used buy at that money. Here is the honest reading. And it has nothing to do with the car being poor. Nobody knows what it is worth, so nobody bids. Weak brand desirability is one of the primary drivers of rapid depreciation, and the Chinese EV brands with almost no UK track record get hit hardest. A used car price is basically a bet on a stranger wanting it later, and a badge nobody's uncle has ever owned makes that bet very hard to price, which is unfair to the machine and extremely fair to you if you are the buyer. Number 12, Tesla, the Model 3 and Model Y, and this is the flag I said mattered most. Between May 2023 and April 2025, average used values across the Tesla range fell by nearly a third. The Model Y down 36.4%, from an average of 47,068 to 29,938. In April 2025, the Model 3 became the first used Tesla to fall below $20,000 in the UK, averaging $19,842, down 36.1% against May 2023. That is a monumental fall, and then it stopped. From September 2025 into January 2026, average used Tesla prices climbed about 4%, even as most other used EVs kept falling. Tesla Model 3 residuals are now spoken of in the same breath as the best retaining EVs on the market, alongside things like the Taycan. Why does one company's used prices stabilize while everybody else's keep sliding? Because Tesla's own aggressive new car price cuts were what pushed used EV values down 30 to 40% in the first place. When a manufacturer drops new car prices, used values almost always follow. Tesla stopped cutting. The values stopped falling. Same car, same battery, same charging network. The only variable that changed was the price of the new one. Which brings us to the thing this whole list is actually about, and to the party that comes out of it worst. Nobody at any of those companies wanted your car to be worth less. That is the part people get wrong when they reach for a conspiracy. What happened is that a rule was written, the industry complied with it in the cheapest way available to them, and the bill arrived at your address. The rule is the zero-emission vehicle mandate. It requires a rising proportion of each car maker's UK sales to be zero emission, backed by fines of up to $15,000 per vehicle. The 2025 target was 28%, rising to 33% this year and 80% by 2030. Nobody asked you about that number. It was chosen for reasons that have nothing to do with your driveway. Now watch how they complied. In 2025, 473,340 battery electric cars were registered, a 23.4% share, short of the 28% target, and the industry body says manufacturers subsidised sales by more than $5 billion to get even that far, equivalent to around $11,000 per vehicle. Over 2 years, more than $10 billion absorbed in EV discounting. Discounts on non-electric cars, for comparison, run to around $6,000, so roughly £11,000 sliced off the price of a new electric car to hit a percentage. And here is the mechanism that puts it in your pocket rather than theirs. Independent analysis found that for cars under 12 months old, approximately 90% of new vehicle price changes flow straight through to the used market. 90%. Your 1-year-old car was repriced by a discount you never received on a car you do not own to satisfy a target you were never consulted about. No letter arrived. Nobody rang. Then the government joined in. The electric car grant, worth up to $3,550 off a new electric car, with a list price of $37,000 or less under a $650 million scheme. Good policy, arguably. Also another few £1,000s, knocked off the price of the new one sitting next to yours. The warning at the time was blunt. Those who bought non-subsidized vehicles risk significant losses if those models later gain subsidy eligibility because the market adjusts residual values downward to reflect the reduced new car transaction prices. I will be fair because sources genuinely disagree on this one. Auto Trader's view was that the grant was unlikely to heavily or immediately affect used EV pricing and residual values. I am taking the more conservative position that it added pressure at the nearly new end and very little further down. But you should know it is contested rather than settled. And here is the detail that turns this from unfortunate into indefensible. The headline 28% target for 2025 was not actually the level required to avoid penalties. One analysis put the real requirement at around 20.4%, because manufacturers also earn credits for selling low-emission petrol and diesel cars. Sit with that. They may well have discounted past the point the rule required, against a headline figure rather than the real one, and every pound of it came out of the value of cars already on British driveways. So no, nobody conspired against you. Something worse happened. A target got written, a compliance strategy got chosen, and the cost of that strategy was quietly transferred to whoever had already bought in good faith. You were the flexible part of the system. That is the sentence you now know. And it will not work on you again. Because from here on, when you see a new car being discounted hard, you will know exactly what is happening to the used one. Let me step away from the anger for a minute, because there is something genuinely worth having in all this, and it is not a grudge. What this whole business teaches is judgment. Specifically, the skill of separating what a thing costs from what a thing is worth, which sound identical and are not related at all. Two people can be sitting in the same Jaguar on the same day, one of whom paid 70,000 and one of whom paid 19. And the car does not know. It drives the same. It is the same quality of engineering, the same care in its design, the same everything. That is not a sad fact. It is a liberating one, because it means the thing you want and the price you pay are two separate decisions, and only one of them is being made by somebody else. Most of what a new car costs is not metal or engineering or the skill of the people who built it. It is a bet on the future. And other people's bets are not your problem unless you volunteer to underwrite them. The old hands in the trade have always known this. They buy at 3 years, they keep to 8 or 10, they service properly, and they never once look at a monthly payment as though it were the price of anything. They are not clever. They just refuse to be told what the number was. Right? The practical part, which is the bit worth writing down. Here is the procedure, and I want you to run it on your own numbers rather than take a rule of thumb from me. First, find the original list price of the exact model and specification you are looking at and divide today's typical asking price by it. Under 40% retained after 3 years, and you are looking at a car somebody lost a great deal of money on, which is good news for you and tells you nothing bad about the car. Second, and this is the one everybody skips, check what the new version currently sells for, including discounts. If new prices are still falling, used prices are still falling, and you should expect to lose money on it too. If new prices have steadied, the floor is real. That single check is what separates a bargain from a car that is merely cheap on its way down. Third, on any electric car, get a measured state of health figure rather than a verbal assurance. Most EVs show it in the settings. The older Leaf uses the battery bar display. A diagnostic tool gives the exact remaining capacity, and the general guidance is to avoid anything below 80 to 85%. Fourth, check the charging socket suits where you actually live and drive, because the plug is hardware and it does not get updated. Fifth, the running costs, and here sources disagree enough that I want to flag it rather than smooth it over. Electric cars now pay road tax. reported at $195 a year in some places and $200 in others. So check your own registration with the DVLA rather than trusting either. The threshold for the expensive car supplement has risen from $40,000 to $50,000, which is worth around $440 a year to affected drivers, and earlier electric cars registered before April 2025 are outside that supplement entirely. And put a line in your budget for April 2028. From that date battery, electric cars face a 3p per mile charge on top of annual road tax with plug-in hybrids at 1.5, roughly $213 a year for an electric car at average mileage, about $107 for a plug-in hybrid. Sixth and last, work out the 3-year total cost, not the monthly payment. Purchase price, minus what you honestly expect it to be worth, plus tax and energy and tyres. Then compare that number against the same sum for a 3-year-old version of the same car. 9 times out of 10 on this list, the used car wins by a margin that is frankly rude. Do that tonight. Pick the car sitting outside your house. Find what it listed for new. Find what it is advertised at now, and do the division. It will take you 10 minutes, and you will know something concrete about your own money that you did not know this morning, including, possibly, that you did rather well. Now, I want the confessions, not the wins, the ones that stung. What did you buy new that you watched fall through the floor? And what was the number when you finally sold it or handed it back? How much of it did you see coming and choose to ignore? I have made that particular decision myself and told myself a story about why it was fine, so there is no judgment available here, only company. Put the model, the year, and the figure in the comments, because 100 real numbers from real owners is a better data set than anything I have quoted today. And if you work in the trade, if you set residuals, or you appraise part exchanges, or you spend your week explaining settlement figures to people who are about to have a bad afternoon, then tell me where I have got this wrong. Not vaguely, specifically with the correction. I would genuinely rather be put right in public than be confidently mistaken in front of thousands of people. And you know things about how those numbers get set that I only ever see the outside of. There is one thread here I deliberately did not pull, and it has been nagging at me for months. If a nearly new car can lose £37,000 without anything happening to it, then somebody, somewhere, is carrying that loss on a balance sheet before it ever reaches a forecourt. The leasing companies, the rental fleets, the short-cycle operators. I do not yet properly understand how that gets absorbed or what happens to the market when it cannot be. I am working on it. Subscribe if you want to be here when I have got to the bottom of it, because I suspect that is the bigger story, and this list is only its shadow. Until then, whatever you are thinking of buying, find out what the new one is really selling for first. It is the cheapest 10 minutes in motoring.